webinar. And so I just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of that. If we could move to the next slide, please. Thanks, Emma. I think it's fair to say a huge amount has changed. And if we go to the next slide again, actually, a huge amount has changed over the last few years, whether it be as a result of COVID or the economic challenges that we've seen, or the more recent challenges in Ukraine and so on. But the reason that we have for being as a national body remains exactly the same, to create a sport that is one of lifelong joy and achievement. And our priorities and our values remain the same as well. We've started to see a return to whatever normality is, but I think it's also fair to say that this year has been another year of real stretch for people across the sport. And I wanted to thank athletes, thank clubs, officials, coaches, volunteers, our partners and staff across England Athletics for the commitment and collaboration in achieving so much in difficult circumstances, and also in finding ways to be creative in terms of making sure that the sport does genuinely remain a core to so many other sports, is aiming to become and is becoming more and more inclusive as time goes past. And I think is the sport that we all believe it can be at its best and is certainly capable of being. It's really for us about lifelong joy, which helps both physical and mental well-being, and that I think is crucial. Next slide, please. This year, though, in the summer, we got a wonderful Commonwealth Games. We were part of that, a core part of it, and I think it gave us all the lift that we needed. It was an integrated Games. It was a successful Games, and I think it really saw an energetic and smiling city at the heart of it in Birmingham, but something that all of us, I think, can be proud of, and some great performances in the middle as well. Next slide, please. So the purpose of this evening is, this is a pre-webinar to the AGM, which will actually take place on the 15th of October at the Hilton NEC, and it's there will be the 2022 AGM. So I'll take you through some of the process that we will obviously go through formally on the day itself, but it's also an opportunity to ask questions and to understand the process that we intend to go through in less than a month's time. We'll provide you with an update on all the activities and financials of the last 12 months, and to set out a roadmap for how we're building back further from the pandemic as a sport, the current priorities, and the relationships with UK and other home countries, as well as with our other partners. And there'll be an opportunity as we go through to ask, for you, our members, to ask questions and to look ahead to where we go from here. Next slide, please. Not all board members are on the call tonight, but many of them are, and many of them are on the panel that will answer questions later. And you can see the range of board members on your screen now. I particularly, though, wanted to say thank you to Steve Granger, and thank you to Peter Crawshaw, who are coming to the end of their terms as directors. They've been exceptional directors for the organisation. I think they've brought, in different ways, a real weight of experience, of perspective, and wise counsel, certainly I've found in the last year since I became chair, and we'll miss them. But we wish them all the best in the future and thank them for their service to the sport, and particularly to England Athletics over the last number of years. Next slide, please. There's also an England Council, and we have I think, a very good relationship with the England Council, chaired by Julian Starkey, who also sits on the board and will be on the panel later on this evening. And that's core to our relationship across the whole of the UK. Next slide, please. I said there'll be a panel answering questions, and there are the photographs of them, and we'll get an opportunity to hear from them in a short period of time as well. So the 2022 AGM itself, It will be streamed live using Zoom, and the England Athletics Hall of Fame will also take place in the evening, which I know from last year is an exceptional event. The notifications have been issued to members on the 13th of September. For those of you who want to go through the paperwork, you can find it on the EA website, and proxy voting is in place. And there are a number of votes, as you can see on the screen. If you can't attend in person and you are a member, then we would encourage you to use your proxy vote. And I can carry the member of proxies if you wish, or you can choose to have someone else do so. There will also be the company lawyer there to make sure the process is appropriately followed. Next slide, please. There are several director appointments, two of which are in relation to the replacements for Peter and Steve having completed their term of office. And both were following an extensive process in terms of applications. We were incredibly impressed actually by the quality of applicants that we had. And I'm delighted that we were able to appoint Jim Buckle and Helen Kendall, and subject to approval at the AGM itself. At the same time, Steve was also the senior independent director, and he has now become, in leaving the board, left a vacancy as the senior independent director, and the board have appointed Tunji to take that position going forward. Janice Holmes was appointed previously following an extensive selection process and has been reappointed by the board for the second 4-year term of office. Not only has Janice been a very strong member of the board itself, I think that also provides an important continuity to the board at a point of significant turnover, for the reasons we've stated above. And I'm delighted to have Janice back with us. Moving on, please. That's just some photos to give you an idea of who they are and what they look like. And Jim, I think we'll have to get a colour photo to bring you up to time. So next slide, please. So on to our priorities as we set them out at the start of last year. And the first priority was really about the strategic plan and delivering on that in line with the budget that was in that, to secure the financial support of Sport England in particular, to make sure that we had the bedrock of financial stability, to make sure that the relationship between the board and the regional councils, and you can see later on the board and our partners at UK and other home country athletics federations work properly, to really bring us back to some normality post the pandemic, to include some key areas of important governance across our sport and across most sports, actually safeguarding the clean sport and the continued drive for us, which is crucial, of equality, diversity and inclusion. And importantly, to oversee the plans for a successful Commonwealth Games, which across many measures, I think has delivered, but there are always things that we can learn and move forward from, and we will do that absolutely. And critically, I've already mentioned some of the changes in terms of the board, but that succession planning was a key aspect of the priorities that we set out. So that was last year at a priority level. Next slide, please. I'd like now to hand over to Chris, who will take us back in terms of what actually happened over the last year. So Chris Jones, our CEO. Chris.
Thank you, Gary, and good evening, everyone. Just very quickly, I wanted to look back in terms of activity areas for 21-22, and in due course, I'll bring it forward to where we are in this current financial year of 22-23, starting April the 1st of this year. As you will see there, we've invested in a number of different areas of work in line with our strategy, which I'll reference in a short while. We need to work with and through others as an organisation. We are not a huge organisation. We are a medium-sized governing body of sport. There are 40-something governing bodies across Britain that are funded by their respective sports councils, and in some cases by UK Sport, the elite performance arm. We are in the middle layer of those governing bodies. We're a small, medium-sized governing body. So we invest in those areas of work, supporting our member clubs and member bodies to develop the sport. And of course, 21-22 was another year, as Gary's referenced, of further recovery from the impacts of the pandemic. Next slide, please. We have a strategic plan, Athletes and Runners at the Heart, that we launched in April 2021. It is available online. I know many of you would have seen this already. We often distribute information relating to our strategy at our events during the year. If you haven't seen it, please take a read, but there are some critical areas of focus for us there. As you would expect as a governing body, as a membership organisation, we're very much focused on participation levels in the sport, supporting our member clubs, supporting our club leaders, and developing and protecting and preserving our facilities, particularly in track and field athletics. We're involved in supporting coaches and officials and developing new coaches and officials. We put on some competitions at a national level ourselves, and we also support and invest with other partners to deliver competitions at a regional and local level across the country. And we also support bodies such as the English Schools Athletic Association. And we also, of course, have a remit around talent. We have the talent identification, talent development remit up to Commonwealth Games level. And that program starts around the ages of 16 with our youth talent program, junior talent program, and senior talent program. And we have the pleasure, as Gary has referenced, of taking the team to Birmingham in 2022, and we'll do in 2026 when we take the Commonwealth Games to Victoria in Australia. And we'll also take the Commonwealth Youth Games to Trinidad and Tobago next year, led by Scott Grace, who is our team leader. Next slide, please. Key activities. There are several of those that I wanted to reference. I won't go through each bullet point, but it was another year of recovery post-pandemic. We were fortunate to stabilise the organisation financially, as Michael will reference in the finance section of this webinar. We did secure during the last year Sport England funding through to the period 2027, which gives us a long-term line of sight, £11.2 million that we've secured from Sport England. They are a major funder and supporter of athletics in England, as of course are our members, who make up around 40% of our annual income. We have continued to develop the relationship with UK Athletics, and we'll talk more about that in a short while. We have continued to invest through our member clubs and with our member clubs and competition providers with grants. And we've also seen the return of the Loughborough and Manchester international competitions for our England teams and home country teams. We've also gone back during 2021 to our full programme of summer championships. And we've also supported the National Athletics League, the Youth Development League, and a number of county championships, English schools, and the school games competition that takes place in September in Loughborough, organised by the Youth Sport Trust. So it's felt like we're getting back to some sort of normality. And pleasingly, the number of licensed road races across the country has continued to recover. We're still not at pre-pandemic levels, but there is sign of recovery. And we also, in total, we license over 1,000 track and field meets across England, which is promising. We started to take more international teams to compete in team competition here and abroad. Next slide, please. We delivered our regional volunteer award programme virtually during 2021. We are now returning this year to face-to-face celebrations, and our Hall of Fame actually returned in October 2021, and that takes place on the evening of the 15th of October this year, following our AGM. Our headcount has increased from the 46 that we had in 2020-21 as a result of a restructure which was enforced by the pandemic, signs of financial recovery, realizing that we need to invest in areas aligned to our strategic plan, and people are central to that. Staffing does make up less than 40% of our annual operational costs, as Michael will reference. And pleasingly, we managed to make good progress in the build towards Birmingham 2022 under Kelly Sutherton's leadership as team leader. And of course, as Gary referenced earlier, we realised 34 medals in Birmingham this summer. We have continued to grow our Run Together leader-led program. We have more than 3,000 leader-led groups across the country, with over 180,000 participants in that program as we stand here tonight. More than 5,500 people were qualified or trained through our coaching officials and leader qualifications. And pleasingly, the organisation achieved the advanced level of the sports equality standard during July 2021. And we also achieved the Investors in People silver level in November 2021. Next slide. So challenges and opportunities. Whilst the recovery has continued, and we should be pleased and assured by that, there are some challenges that our sport faces. The number one challenge that is keeping the board and the executive focused at this time is the track and field participation decline and dropout, particularly in teenage years. There is not one intervention that will sort this in isolation from a number of other things we believe that need to be done. Competition, we think, is central to that. And we are speaking to a number of competition providers about evolving competitions and potentially changing how those competitions are delivered where necessary. But of course, that starts with us at England Athletics, making sure that our events at national level are of high quality, from pre-competition registration, the event itself, and then the post-event experience as well. So competition is central. Of course, how we cater for our youngest athletes coming into the sport for the first time, how we provide a great experience for them, a safe experience, is fundamentally important. So we know that a number of organised sports are struggling post-pandemic with participation dropout. We think the relationship of the participant with organised sport in general has changed. There's a lot of challenge around those teenage years with lots of other calls on people's time, on parents' time. And of course, we're now working against the backdrop of national and global uncertainty, certainly on the financial front across the UK. Increasing and diversifying coaching and officials levels will, of course, contribute towards that track and field participation picture. And we need to keep rethinking how we present our sport at all levels to capture the imagination of all participants of all backgrounds and all abilities. And of course, we've had a wonderful summer. Some English athletes have performed really, really well on the global stage, at the World, at the Commonwealth Games and the European Championships. How do we harness that feel-good factor and those performances to inspire the next generation? So those are the kind of areas that are taking up a lot of our thinking time at England Athletics, and all of those areas are aligned to our strategic plan as an organisation. Next slide. Again, in terms of key risks looking forward into this year, 2022, some of those risks are not going to be, those challenges are not going to be sorted overnight. There remain key risks. Commercially, the market is difficult. Fourth bullet down. We are actively looking for sponsors with UK Athletics and our other home country partners. That is challenging. We have a plan, we have a strategy for that, and we are speaking to various different brands. And so we're optimistic about that picture changing, but it is difficult. And of course, we need to bring in sponsors and partners to alleviate the pressure on other budgets that we rely on to deliver and support the sport. And of course, at a local level, a number of our clubs and member bodies will be feeling similar pressures and challenges. Thankfully, we've seen a number of investments in the redevelopment and maintenance of our track and field facility stock over the last 12 months, and that is reassuring. On the facilities front, England Athletics will be looking very carefully at where we stage our national championships moving forward in 2023, given that we obviously have a new stadium in Birmingham, where our offices are based. So we're looking at where we locate our championships and where the best facilities will provide the best experience for athletes in our events. And of course, we continue to invest with UK Athletics and the other home countries in ensuring that people are safe in our sport, supporting our clubs through the club standards process to ensure that clubs are well governed and they receive the necessary support and resources where they need them. And that is a piece of work that I feel is going to be a priority for us in this sport for the next few years, certainly, as we look to make sure that every participant in our sport is safe. Next slide, please. So where we are bringing this to the current picture in 22-23, 151,000 registered club athletes in our member clubs have joined England Athletics since April this year. In 21-22, that number finished at 165,000 at the end of March. So we're ahead of where we were this time last year is the message. So that recovery is continuing, albeit that the track and field participation numbers are a challenge, as we've mentioned, and we're forging the plan in that respect. We're still not where we were in 2019, pre-pandemic, but as I say, the shoots of recovery are there to see. And we are nearly at the same number of clubs that affiliated with us in 21-22. So those are on par. And as you can see, we are increasing the number of road races that we license compared with 2021. So we're around 2,750. We're still well below the pre-pandemic numbers. And we are working with a number of the road race organisers, the Great Run Company, London Marathon, Human Race, Limelight Sports, and various others, including, of course, our member clubs who make up 66% of the licensed races in this country, to support them and their race directors to recover to pre-pandemic levels. I'll move on from there, please, Emma, because I think some of those were covered previously. Thank you. We are launching an England Athletics charitable foundation. Personal Best Foundation is going to be launched on the 18th of November in London. It is a charity that's been 5 years in the making. It's now been approved by the Charities Commission, and the founding trustees are now in the process of building up to that launch event, where we will be looking to raise some income, some revenue to invest in the charity, in the activities of the charity. And Personal Best, for those who aren't aware, is focused on removing barriers and inequalities where they exist that prevent young people from getting involved in track and field athletics. And when we're talking about age groups here, we're talking largely from infancy up to around 25, 26. And that might be to invest in coaching qualifications, officials qualifications, becoming a leader in our sport, a volunteer in our sport, and removing some of those barriers that might prevent that happening. Equipment, facility improvements, and also supporting clubs at a local level to reach out to their communities. In some cases, that might be setting up new groups where they are needed, but we're really excited about the potential for Personal Best. Obviously, as a limited company, England Athletics is restricted in the revenue it can generate to invest in such good causes, hence why Personal Best Foundation has been established. We will need to work with and through others to deliver its objectives. Personal Best will not employ staff. We have a foundation manager employed by England Athletics, but we will be looking to work with member clubs across the country and groups and other charities at a national and local level to deliver the objectives of the foundation. So there will be a website for Personal Best. I think it's www.personalbestfoundation.org.uk. So watch out for that, and the launch is on the 18th of November in London. Next slide. And we will be calling and harnessing the inspiration of the Birmingham 2022 Games to drive the success, not just of England Athletics, but the charitable foundation. We will be looking to recruit some headline ambassadors and patrons to help the work of the foundation moving forward and building on the feel good of Birmingham 2022. And I must mention, around Birmingham 2022, our activation zone saw more than 5,500 young people come through that activation program, using our phonetics 4 to 11-year-old skills-based program, and then feeding into local community festivals and holiday camps around the Birmingham area, part of an 18-month investment into youth athletics in the Birmingham West Midlands area, a blueprint that we will be looking to take to other parts of the country, probably involving our charitable foundation in some form. Next slide, please. And many of you will be aware that we coordinate a series of national campaigns aligned to our social running program, Run Together. We are building towards our #RunAndTalk campaign at this moment in time, led by Harry Stowe, our EDI manager, who joined us in the summer. We're very proud of that program, and we have over 1,000 mental health champions in clubs and Run Together groups across England, something that has gone from strength to strength, largely unaffected in terms of numbers through the pandemic. In fact, it's grown in popularity and arguably importance, I would say, during that period. Next slide. I'm going to hand over to Michael now to give us a summary of the finances for 21-22. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris, and good evening to everybody. Good to have you here. First thing I'd like to say is that we have delivered a positive set of financial results, which really reflects our post-pandemic progress, trying to get back to those pre-pandemic levels. So this is certainly a good step in that direction. We've also achieved another year of clean audit. We went through the audit process in the summer. The auditors signed off our accounts with a clean bill of health and have warranted our going concern basis. So that's definitely good progress considering what we've been through in the last few years. Next slide, please. Some of the headlines, the main points to note, and you'll see the audit accounts on the website and filed at Companies House, is to note that improvement in income. Our operating income improved by 1.5 million, which reflected improvements across all of our major income streams, grant funding, and you'll see on the next slide or so, all the areas that showed that progress, which culminated in our year-end surplus of 227k. This is our third year on the trot of achieving a surplus, which has contributed to our reserves position. We are in a healthy position in terms of our reserves policy, which ensures that we have sufficient monies held back for a certain criteria in terms of unforeseen circumstances, or if indeed we get to take more drastic action. So we're in a very good position where that's concerned, and really just showing that post-pandemic progress that we have made since coming out of COVID. Interesting to note the sources of income. You can see that reliance on those two key streams of income: membership and affiliation, our athlete registration scheme, and our funding from Sport England. We are keen to grow all the streams of income in the right proportions, just to make sure that we are as resilient as possible, but good to have seen growth in those areas. Next slide, please. This slide represents our position compared to last year, 2021, 2022 in the middle, and then starts to talk about the budget for the year that we're in now. And you can see that progress of income stream across those three columns, showing the growth in our grant income through Sport England in the main. Is not just our core or system partner funding, as is now called, but we've also had other aspects of funding, for example, Commonwealth Games funding in terms of preparation, team leader, and some things around legacy to come in this year as well. The membership and affiliation line shows that growth in our membership, recovering from the pandemic and trying to progress towards those pre-pandemic levels. And as Chris had mentioned, the challenges around ensuring that the drop-off doesn't affect that too much. And so the budget has attempted to achieve 174,000 registered athletes this year, and hopefully we are progressing towards that. In terms of our expenditure, you can see the cost base moving from the COVID year, where things were significantly cut back. The 22 number shows us progressing back toward delivery of our various projects and programs, really investing back in the sport in the way that we desire to, and delivering all the things around club support, our competition structures, and our athlete development in terms of taking teams away and the rest. And inside there is some of the work around the Commonwealth Games finalised in the 2023 budget. So you can see the surplus for the year. The budget surplus is reduced for 2023. That just reflects our desire to invest appropriate in the sport, and the shape of and nature of the programs that's included in the budget and the operational plan just reflects that we are trying to ensure the sport does get all of the resources to ensure that we grow in the right way, aligned to our strategic plan. Next slide, please. This slide talks about our expenditure, and we've tried to show against our core areas of activity, and some of this will change in our new shape of operation plan for 23, but you can see where the money does go across those key lines, and the priorities that even in the COVID year on the purple line that those areas still received significant amounts of investment in line with the income that we were able to draw down. And certainly the sport-facing activities of club support, participation, competition, coaching, athlete development are the areas that always get the priority amounts of investment. Next slide, please. This shows the income streams that's planned for 22-23, the budget year. Again, you can see the heavy reliance on membership and affiliation, 3 million, our funding from Sporting, the 3.1 million, but yet still our core programs, coach education, competition, road race licensing, still drives 20% of our planned income stream. Commercial assumes us attracting and securing a headline sponsor in this year, and plans are being made with the UKA to ensure that we do deliver against that line. But you can see the spread of budget in terms of what we're seeking to bring in. And the more resilient we can be in those areas and grow that, the better. Thank you, Emma. Next slide. This is quite a good slide. I think it points to our investment in the sport, and you think £8.1 million going back into the sport in various categories. So clubs and club leaders getting 1.2 million. So this is a good way of seeing where the money does go. And all of the income streams are mixed appropriate to support our investments into those key areas of activity, and supported by our systems. So you've got £2.4 million of ensuring our governance, our digital systems, and the programs around that support the delivery of the finances to support the sports. Next slide, please. Hand back to Chris. If you've got any questions, we'll take them at the end.
Thank you, Michael. Just a little bit on partnerships, particularly with Sport England in our case, and also our relationship with UK Athletics. So just to remind people, our primary interface with government, if you like, is through Sport England, government community sports arm. We don't receive any funding from UK Sport, the performance arm of government. UK Athletics are funded by them. We're funded by Sport England. So those percentage splits that Michael's just put up there, we are heavily dependent on Sport England grant, of course, complemented by the income that we generate through our members, through income attributed to qualifications, some sponsorship, some competition entry fees. Next slide, please. Our relationship with UK Athletics is ever evolving. It's become clearer and clearer over the last couple of years in terms of our role, our responsibility, and theirs. On the right-hand side, you'll see a list of functions that UK Athletics delivers. The highlighted section in red is a work in progress. And what I mean by that is road racing or races have already come across to England Athletics. And I deliberately kept it in this box because I wanted to use that as an illustration of a transfer of responsibilities coming to England Athletics. So road race licensing and management of that is now run by England Athletics. The website still says Run Britain. We communicated that out to road race directors a month or so back, and essentially there'll be a rebrand of that over the coming period. So Barry Hopkins is now leading that program, taken over from Gavin Lightwood, who used to be the Run Britain licensing manager. England Athletics is now delivering that. And we're also now in the process of negotiating a transfer of other areas, such as officials education. From early October at levels 1 to 3, England Athletics will take responsibility and accountability for qualifications at that level. And there'll be communication coming out around those functions as well. And we're continually reviewing what sits where in that box there titled licensing. What I would say is England Athletics is taking more accountability, more responsibility for the domestic sport. UK is becoming more focused, more sharp at that, what I often refer to the top 2 inches, if you like, with a majority of the meringue, as I refer to it, and there's the cherry on the top, which is UKA doing the function that it provides. So I thought that'd be useful just to show that. Some of you would have seen that previously in previous webinars, but I still think it's useful to reference back to it. Next slide, please. Okay.
Thanks, Chris, and thanks, Michael. Right, if we could go to the next slide, please. We now have an opportunity for Q&A, but also just before we do, I wanted to give any of the other panel members the opportunity to make any further comments on anything that they think we've missed as we've gone through, or they'd like to expand on. So Peter, Lorna, or Julian, anything that you'd particularly like to expand on before we go into Q&A? I'll assume silence is acquiescence on this basis of the virtual environment that we're in. Okay, in which case, can I ask whether there are any questions from the floor, please? I believe we do have one question that's been asked prior, but I think you may have that question, Chris. I haven't got it in front of me, but just before we go to that question, are there any questions that people want to raise? And you can raise it in the chat or come off mute, whichever you prefer. Right. Chris, do you want to raise the question that we've had prior to the meeting?
A question from an individual who couldn't be here tonight, but it was about Masters competition and representative opportunities for Masters athletes. Some of you will be aware we've run an international off-track Masters program for several years now, going back to around 2015-16, I think, which has been pretty successful in getting Masters age group runners from running clubs across the country representing England through a qualification process. And we've had a question about whether we intend to extend that or expand that to track and field athletics as well. We do enjoy a good relationship with British Masters and England Masters, and that is something, having spoken to Tom Craggs, who runs our off-track program, that we will look to pursue and see how we can support Masters track and field athletics in a more detailed way. What we are conscious of, if something's working well and it's delivered by another organisation, we just want to add value to that and hopefully improve it, rather than being perceived to be kind of muscling in and taking over, if that makes sense, because we can then, if it's being done well, we can focus elsewhere on stuff that perhaps needs more of our support. But we will look at that, and thank you for the question from the individual who tabled that.
Thanks, Chris. I'll give a minute or so more for any other questions.
Gary, it's Janice Kaufman here.
Hi, Janice.
Hi. Not a question as such, but just a reminder to people who are on this webinar that council elections are coming up early next year. And, you know, we've got some really good people on regional and national councils, but we need more good people. So just to go out to clubs and around the region to get people who are interested in sitting on regional councils.
Very well made point. Thank you, Janice. Much appreciated. Anything else that anyone wanted to raise? In which case, just before we close, I just wanted to say a couple of things. I mean, it's been a year since I became chair, and that's given me, as I've gone and met people, it's given me some interesting experience and feedback. What I would say is, in a difficult time, I see a huge number of very committed, very experienced and very capable people working to the benefit of many, many individuals across the sport, not just the elite, but people who are everything from social runners to lifelong runners to just social, being part of a social club and being part of sport as a spectator. And I see huge amounts of effort being put into making that successful. We have, as a sport, we are very fortunate that it's such a core part of, if you like, the English sporting calendar. And we have drama, we have excitement, we have inspiration at all levels. I do think we have a tendency to focus on the things that are challenges as much as we focus on the things that are cause for celebration. And in a way, that's a good thing because we need to keep on improving. But I do think it would be worth stepping back and seeing some of the celebration from time to time. We have a real challenge in the UK, not just with physical health, but also with mental health. 1 in 7 young people expect to have, will be expected to have a mental health condition of one form or another. And that's a number that I think sport in general and athletics as a core sport plays a key role in helping to resolve. And there's lots of evidence that sport is fundamental to mental well-being. And I think we need to reflect and continue to deliver against that. I also see a lot of complexity in our sport, and Chris mentioned some of the changes that we've been talking to UKA about. And I think that's crucial, that we look for ways of simplifying our sport going forward. We look for creative ways of utilising technology to make the sport continually more accessible and more exciting for people. I mean, young people today have lots of options and lots of opportunities in how they spend their leisure time. And I think it's up to us to make sure that we collaborate to make sure that we are an attractive proposition, an exciting proposition, and water flows downhill. And therefore, if people get involved in the sport, they really can find ways of making it a lifelong joy in the way that we want it to be. And so many of them.
Is that Gary who's frozen? Okay. I think Gary was at the closing.
I also think
Gary, we lost you there. Do you want to pick up again?
Right.
We lost you about 10 seconds ago.
Okay. Well, I was just about finishing actually. So to complete, I think we may just have had a question actually. We will send out the slides, Peter. Yes, absolutely. I believe we can do that to those people who are registered. I'm not sure quite where you lost me, but what I would say is a huge thank you to everyone involved, as I said at the start, across the
I think I can conclude. I think Gary, we finally lost Gary. Thank you to everyone who's joined this evening. Thank you to my colleagues. Wishing you all the very best, and thanks for everything that you do in the sport in whatever capacity. It's fundamentally important if we're to drive our sport forward to future success. Have a good evening, and thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you, everyone.